Thank you. I'm going to recognize myself for 5 minutes. Ms. Romero, would this checklist for the banks be similar to what scrutiny businesses would go through for a lending program?
No, and it shouldn't
Not even
be,
close, is it?
It shouldn't be how the government makes their investments.
Wow. Would you consider $1.13 return versus $1 investment a good portfolio?
No, and I wouldn't consider taking $500 million and then not lending off of it a good portfolio either.
It's pathetic. I'm a businessman. I happen to be a dentist for 25 years, so the return on investment was pathetic. Mr. Geithner, when the Secretary talked to Congress in regards to this program, did he misrepresent this program to Congress?
Well, I mean,
specifically in that clip, he talks about a return on investment, of lending of $8 to $10 for every dollar invested. That's clearly not what transpired here.
I think the intention was there. I think the problem was in the execution.
So let me get this straight. Wow, thank you. So execution really poor again. It seems we have a recurrent theme here with the Secretary of Treasury that we have very poor oversight. Maybe we mean well, but we have very poor exercise of the facts. And is it not financial aspects are about facts and about details, is it not, Ms. Romero?
The facts and the details are incredibly important here.
Wow. Secretary of Treasury, we can't get those right. Let me ask you what's fair. If a bank made a dividend purchase, do you think it's fair that the taxpayer should get it back? And how about the CEOs getting those pay? Shouldn't we get that back? That should be fair, right?
I absolutely agree with that. That never should have been allowed, and it should not be allowed in the future. And we've made a recommendation to the banking regulators to never allow it again, and they've rejected that recommendation.
Wow. So the ranking member just talked to you about a letter from Mr. Graves about a rigorous, serious review of these protocols. That checklist, to me, is hardly a serious review. And it seems like we go over and over again pointing the finger, the blame game, so that we don't know who is responsible for this. But it really lies with Treasury, does it not?
It's their program.
Would you kind of, I know you went in depth a little bit with Mr. Graves' letter in regards to the ranking member, but for mom and pops out there, that's really ill-intentioned, right?
Treasury is absolutely responsible in picking the right banks to go in. And when Congress says, well, we don't want a repeat of what happened with TARP, where lending didn't increase, so we're going to fix it. And our safeguard to make sure that they lend is to require a lending plan. When there's no meaningful, consistent review of that lending plan by the government, then the intent of Congress is thwarted in putting that safeguard in.
I'm glad you brought up the intent of Congress. Do you believe that this bill was well vetted?
You know, I don't have any idea on how Congress vetted it.
Oh, it seems to me that this was very ill vetted because it's the application. You always look at outcomes. What was the intended course and the outcomes? And this is a failure by any stamp of the imagination. And we didn't vet this bill very appropriately. This was rushed through in Congress. We actually had a Secretary of Treasury misrepresenting the plan, at least giving it expectations that there was no intentions of follow through. Because what I see the Secretary of Treasury doing is explaining one thing to Congress and then following through with nothing, absolutely nothing. And wait a minute. You made a comment that said that the numbers matched the TARP numbers, did you not? So there must have been very interesting dialogue behind the scenes, right?
The 42 banks only got enough SBLF dollars to pay off TARP. It should have been obvious that the banks then did not have capital to lend off of it. And beyond being obvious, we sent a letter to Secretary Geithner, September 2010, when they were picking the banks, warning of this and saying you can't switch a bank out of TARP into SBLF. It doesn't make sense if they don't have the capital to lend but for the TARP capital. And that was rejected.
The fox in the hen house. Boy, just really interesting. Just one last question. I know I'm running out of time, but do you feel there's adequate capital for small business out in America right now?
No.
What's our #1 biggest area of growth? Is it large business or small business?
No, certainly I agree with Congressman Duckworth, small businesses really need help here, and that's why we made the recommendation to try to help. That Treasury should even now try to help these banks come up with a new plan to increase lending to small businesses, because that's that's what we're looking at. We're looking at from the small business perspective.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge the gentleman from Nevada, Mr. Horsford.